Okay. Let's make a start. So first of all, just thinking a little bit about your stance. Feet are below your hips. Weight just shifting forwards in your feet a little bit. And you can see this is exaggerated, but you can see how that puts a slight angle in my body, angling forwards, which we just allow our hips to sink back. Counter that. It's just this very simple movement. Knees both nice and soft. Just a slight bend in your knees, as though you've got a little ball tucked in underneath the, or behind rather, the knees and in your hips. Just sitting in to your hips with a general feeling of just quieting down in your mind and allowing the weight of your body to settle. And then turning in this center part of your body between hips and waist. A couple of slow, gentle breaths. You'll have the movement here in the middle of your body, moves your ribs for you. And your ribs move your shoulders. And finally, your shoulders move in your arms. So a slight pull on your arms. Maybe making use of this image of moving through water. It's so common in Tai Chi. So that little bit of resistance, meaning that in order to maintain the pattern, which is a very simple pattern, there needs to be a little bit of substance in your body, particularly in connections to your arms. Not strained, not stiff, because if we were in water, that would increase the resistance, but not just very loose and floppy, because if I turn in water, my arm will be held back. Something's got to pull through. This is quite a tricky balance to find, and one of the reasons we use the image of moving through water is because our bodies do respond to images. They respond quite well as a rule for most of us. If you were walking down the road and you're a bit hungry and then you see a billboard with your favorite food on, the mouth will start to water and so on. Maybe the tummy will start to rumble. And it's these little things, these little changes in the body that will provide these connections. It's not, oh, I've got to sort of tighten your biceps and triceps, for instance. Your arms, when they come round, and I'll come a little bit closer. Hopefully you can hear that slight striking takes place. They're almost like you're just gently striking a drum. So there's a substance in your arm, but not a tight one, not a stiff one. You could imagine you've got a little bit heavy, like a full shopping bag in each hand, is another image you might find useful. So your body is set into a nice steady rhythm. So as you turn in one direction, there's an extension here in the opposite side. And as that extends out, it reaches a point where if you were to go any further, it will be tightening up. So you just let it pull you back. And so the rhythm just settles into your body quite naturally. Loosen your fingers, maintaining this posture where you're sinking down a little bit. And then you're going to raise your arms, and you turn your hands palm out, and it's just a very simple rotation through your shoulder. Not this or anything like that. Keep the shoulder down. Let your arm rotate up, no higher than shoulder height. Maybe lower, and your elbow's lower than your hand. So just see if you can feel the weight of your arm pulling down on your shoulder rather than your shoulder trying to lift the weight of your arm. That can be quite difficult because a lot of the time we seem to spend with our shoulders pushing up towards our ears, which means that these muscles here at the top of the shoulders tend to get a little bit tight. So this movement where they drop down, you may feel a pull there, but give it time and the muscles will stretch out and it will start to feel more comfortable. Good. And then put one foot forwards. Again, keep the width of your step about the same in length. You're going to be moving your weight and turning in the body. And try and do this so that you're turning in the direction of the foot that you're moving towards. So on your back foot, you're on a slight diagonal, on the front foot, you're facing straight forwards. If you find that you're turning the other way, don't force yourself to turn this way, but try and work out why you're turning that way. And it may be that as you go back, this back leg is stiffening up, in which case your body's doing what you want it to do, which is that it's moving around the obstruction. What you don't want to do is to force yourself to turn this way, because that will make the obstruction worse. And again, a nice steady rhythm. This time, just let your legs generate the rhythm. Imagine your legs are like springs, or that you're doing this on a trampoline or a bouncy castle. Every time you sink down, there's a push back. Every time you sink down, there's a push forwards. And what we want to do is to take that push that is essentially pushing us upwards. If we were on a trampoline or something like that, would be bouncing up and down. And instead of going up and down, we direct it forwards through the center of the body. So from the back leg, this comes up, and instead of doing this, my intent sends me forwards. And then on the other side. And shake out. So back to the parallel stance. Here your weight is 50% in each leg, and of that 50% in each leg, about 70% is in the front half of your foot. So again, giving you that slight feeling of angling forwards, neutralized by your hips dropping back. You want to think in terms of your shoulders being in line with your ankles. If you look here, you see my hand, my middle finger on the seam of my shorts, and I imagine the line from there all the way down to my ankle. Try not to hold your hands back behind you or artificially in front. But for most of what we do, the arms will remain in front, and this gives a slightly concave feeling to our chest and our ribs. So rather than pulling the belly in, puffing the chest out, essentially we're doing the opposite. We're letting the weight drop down, softening in belly and hips, and allowing the ribs and the chest to just soften a little bit. So, hands cradling the ball, sink down a little bit more, pushing up, don't move the arms yet, and sink down. So this is the basic movement that you're looking for. What's happening here is that gravity is pulling on your hips. Remember, they're slightly back anyway, they're overhanging, and so they're susceptible to the pull of gravity. And we let that happen. We let the hips drop down until we feel that the response in our legs, as they get denser is going to change. If I try and push myself down here, I'm straining now. But what I do is I get to here and I push up. Again, like being on a trampoline. So the sinking down, in a sense, will initiate all of the movements. And that movement expands up through my back and then into the front of the body, chest, ribs, belly, and eventually, as I push up, it will push my elbows out, but I keep my fingers close to each other. So the net result is my hands come up a little bit and then down, as though I'm lifting the ball, and as though the ball were quite heavy as I lift it. And then as though I'm pressing down on the ball's in water. So again, there's that little bit of resistance. So we look to be able to root down. The name of the exercise is rooting down. We aim to allow that to happen. And through that, we get a more stable structure, less strain on the upper part of the body as my center of gravity drops. And as I've just pointed out, it is also the thing that initiates the cycle of movement. Contraction, sinking down into the ground, followed by expansion, pushing up. Back a little bit so my hands don't disappear. And then changing, rotating your arms out and the wild goose. Same rhythm. Obviously, with your arms going out to the sides, it's going to start to feel slightly different. We'll come back to that idea in a few moments. But the image here of a bird in flight may help, or you can imagine waving a feather up and down in the air, the kind of resistance given by the feather to the air is an indication of the sort of feeling you're going to get in your arms. And this is followed by the third of this series of movements, hands crossed in front of your belly. Again, your elbows pushing out, this time drawing your fingers apart. So we get the circling movement apart in the clouds. So we're going to take these 4 movements and in a moment we're going to join them up into a little sequence. So do one more part in the clouds. And then as your hands come down, this time as they reach point level with your hips, your elbows bend, go back into rooting down. One of each. Don't worry if you get lost in the sequence. At the end of the movement, you rotate your arms out with the wild goose. At the end of this movement, the hands drop down the part in the back. So don't rush the changeover, although in terms of time, it's relatively short, it's still very significant. And just let your attention rest in your body. Notice the changes and the similarities between one movement and another. And that may include sort of differences in image, as well as an awareness of between physical sensations within your body. And this is really just to help you to begin to feel what's happening within your body, rather than just following what my arms are doing, but to feel those changes in those internal patterns. May not be the same every time. And once again, as we develop in Tai Chi, it's going to be those small changes that we begin to focus on more and more, using our intent to produce the changes within our body. And it's those changes that will produce the external movement. And that's just a long-term progression in Tai Chi, but it's a process that starts with following the choreography, the external movement. So Tai Chi is an internal art. We don't disregard the external, but we build the movement from within the body. Or rather, within body and mind would be more accurate. You breathe in nice and soft, not following any particular breathing pattern, unless in a previous session I've talked about breathing patterns and you found one that is comfortable for you. But do be aware of your breath as much as possible if that's comfortable. Make this the last one. So then straight into the next movement, which is dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Same rhythm, and if possible, the same awareness of movements within your body, how they build into the bigger movements. Still aware of the change, particularly with this one, the change between one side of your body and another. Easy and gently. Don't rush these movements. Try and complete each movement. There's often an urge to dash from one side to another. Let your arm come down. Remember, your arm is quite heavy. Drop down. Feel the full weight of your arm, if possible, with that alignment with your ankle. And only then move your attention across to the opposite side. And down. Easy and gentle. Do one more. And then stand. Shake your legs out. So those 4 movements all use this very active sinking of the hips and then the response in our body, the springing it in our legs, pushing us up. This creates a two-way dynamic, yielding, going down, and then the firmer movement coming up in a gentle cyclical rhythm. The next few exercises, the hips aren't actively sinking down, but they remain, again, I'll come close, they remain here. It's not this. So gravity is always working through your body. This gives you just that slight sensation of overhanging in buttocks, hips, lower back. And so that just that sense of a downward movement. We're good at sensing space. It's like if you're walking along a path on a cliff or something like that, and you come to a bit where it's very close to the edge, you're aware of the gap, you're aware of the space. And so what we're looking to be able to do is we're not going to actively sink down for the next few movements, but we're going to try and not stiffen up in hips, lower back, knees, for instance, so that the pull of gravity has a free passage downwards through your body. And then what's going to happen is, of course, unless you collapse on the ground, which I hope you're not going to do, of course, then there's going to be an upward movement. There's going to be a response from the body, like when you get a ball and you push it down into water. As you push down, you feel the water pushing back up. So we still have that vertical dynamic going on. And in the next few exercises, at certain points, we're going to use the center of the body, the rotation in the center of the body, to redirect the movement. So maintain the stance as much as you can. Bring your hands to the side of your body and then slightly in front, pushing in 4 directions. First movement pushes up and then down. It's almost as though you're aware of these currents of movement, and it's like, you can imagine playing poo sticks on a bridge over a stream. You might choose that channel or that channel. You sometimes have several sort of currents. You choose which current to put your attention in. So again, pushing up, nice long feeling in your back, and dropping down again. The next 3 movements all involve a push out with your arms. And what you do then is you turn. It doesn't matter which way you turn. This is the horizontal rotation in the center of the body. As you turn back, you bring your hands back to rest beside your hips. You turn the opposite way, and again your hands push out in exactly the same way as they were before. All the movement is in the center of your body and back, and then you face the front and push out. So those are your 4 directions. And back. So expanding and contract. Expanding, contract. And again, take your time between movements. Let your arms rest for a split second here before you push out again. There's no hurry. Try and make sure that both the expansion and the contraction are equal in length as much as possible. And just recognize that the tendency is for us to rush the withdrawing movement. But we could classify the expansion as yang, contraction as yin, and as always in Tai Chi, we're looking for a sense of harmony between these opposites. One more round. So we're choosing which of the 2 directions of movement we're paying attention to at any particular time here. The downward movement, the contracting movement, yin here, the expanding movement, but they they're both happening simultaneously. This time, let your hands drop down, feel the weight of your arms, and again, choosing that expansive quality. Let it push out one arm and then straight down the middle line. So the rhythm of the movement, the flow, the energy is there in the pull of gravity and in our body's response to that. There's energy to move. We then bring our intent to bear. And we decide, for instance, here it's going to be the hand pushing out. There's all sorts of movements that we could do, of course. So we're training ourselves to recognize that movement in the body and to use our intent to guide it. Now, this time, when your hand gets to here, if it's comfortable, again, you turn. And the turn is in your hips almost entirely. So don't get to here and then try and pull your shoulder around or throw your posture out. And change sides. Again, just aware of any differences between one side of your body and the other. And then again, very carefully turn in here, in the middle, feeling your shoulders following around, your arm following your shoulder. Good, and face the time. Give your legs a shake. So those two exercises introduce the idea that a horizontal rotation in the middle of the body moves my arms for me. The movement is controlled, directed through the center of our body. So this area here between hips and waist becomes an increasingly important focal point for our attention. If I were to draw an analogy, it's like if you drive a car, you've got the structure of the car, the mechanics of the car, you've got the petrol that drives the car, the energy, you've got the driver who steers the car, and then you've got the steering wheel, and this is like the steering wheel. So a lot happens between, if you like, head and center. The next couple of movements also introduce the vertical rotation in the center of the body. Here, I think of my pelvis as being level. Here, my hips go back and my pelvis tilts forwards and then tilts back. And you can see the effect of that is to move my head and my shoulders and eventually my arms forwards. Be careful with this next movement. I will do it quite big so you can see what I'm doing. Careful with your back and your knees. So push your hips back, sink down a little bit, and get this feeling of lengthening through your spine. And then just let your hips succumb to the pull of gravity and sink down again. See how that brings you back to the upright position. And you push up and then repeat. 1, and then 2, coming to the upright position. 3, a little bit of a push up. 1, 2, and 3. This time on 3, letting your arms follow. This is rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. So again, I do this quite big so you can see what I'm doing, but it doesn't have to be that big. Just be very careful of your back and your knees. how far is it appropriate for you to go down, to go forwards. With the movement forwards always initiated through your hips going back, not by leaning forwards in your shoulders. And that's important because if I start with my attention up here in my shoulders and I do this, instantly I'm starting to fall. So I'm going to introduce a strain in to an exercise that is already quite strong. One more time. This time, when you come to the upright position, your hands are down in front of your hips, palm down. You turn first horizontally, then you push your hips back. That pushes your hands forwards. You turn horizontally and then vertically. So you're combining the two planes of rotation. This is called polishing the table. Reverse the direction. Do one more on each side. And stand. Shake out. So that's the basic set that we do in the parallel stance, in what we refer to sometimes as the Wu Chi stance. Sometimes we do movements, I know, that involve the weight transfer in the parallel stance, but I'm not going to do those today. We're going to go straight to the forward stance again. So when I do this, what I want to be thinking in terms of is, it's like I imagine a square paving slab that I'm standing on, and I'm standing on the diagonal corners of paving slab. So not a massive stride, but not too short either, because there isn't that much room to move forwards and backwards. And hip width, I don't want to be like this, because now it's like I'm trying to balance on a tightrope. Once again, in the middle, my hips, my center of gravity can drop, and as much as possible, I'm facing forwards. If you find yourself at a slight angle, don't rush to try and connect. And then just beginning to transfer your weight. Let yourself sink into the front leg a little bit, 60% of your weight in the front leg. And when you feel your leg responding by pushing back, your intent is to go into your back leg. Same thing here, giving yourself a moment to settle there and then going forwards. So once again, the act of sinking down in towards the ground is the initial movement that, if you like, begins the cycle. And again, we see there the huge significance of this rooting down. It's not just about stability, although that's important. It really does initiate the driving forces in Tai Chi. And these movements happen because of our response to the pull of gravity. and then sinking into your back foot. Try not to lean backwards. And just flex your front foot so your toes come up. A little bit more weight will settle into your back foot. I like to have my front foot turned out at this point. I go forwards. I push my back knee forwards. My heel comes up, and I drop a bit more into the front foot. That's why the heel is. That's why the toes are slightly turned out. Give myself a little bit more space in my head. So now, gradually, more of the weight flowing down through your leg. So be careful of your knees as you do this. Don't strain for this. This is why we do it like this. So we gradually build up. It's like a tap dripping into a bowl. Gradually, drip by drip, the bowl will fill up. Try and make sure that you're not doing something like this, leaning forwards here, because that will throw your posture out, or leaning backwards here. You see, shoulder, hip, hand pointing down towards my ankle, and the same thing if I show that going forwards here. I'm on the front leg. I'm not quite there yet. I'm almost there. So you're gradually moving closer to a point where you're nicely in line, not over two legs, but over one leg. The weight sinking down, and that's when we bring the foot in. Push back and out to the hip width. Bring the foot in. Push forwards and out the hip width. And that becomes a little circular movement. Try not to go back to having your arms stiff. Remember that weight in your arms. And shake out. It's useful to try and get away from the idea of balancing, because balance implies a kind of movement from one to the other. When you're in balance, you're being pulled in one direction and the opposite direction equally. But the direction we're really interested in inside chi is downwards. We want to be able to let our weight drop down through the supporting leg. Now, our posture is important here. Again, I'm going to come closer so that you can see. Again, earlier I was saying how the pelvis is level when we're in the parallel stance. So when I raise my knee, I want my pelvis to remain level. I don't want to sort of do this, because then I'm off straight away. And I soften in my hips. So as my knee comes up, the feeling of being pulled down through my hips becomes stronger. And I want to avoid even the slight misalignment of my pelvis, either side to side or alternatively here. If I do this, then I'm going to be thrown off. So in a way, we're saying that we remove the need for balancing because we're stable. So try that with your other foot forwards. Remember the stance, get the stance right, because you're going to need it later. And then moving from your feet, the transfer of your weight, 60% goes into your front foot. When you go back, 70% in your back foot. No more than that, maybe not that much. Make sure that hips, knees, ankles, particularly the knees, don't resist the movement. So the first part of your body that feels the pressure of the weight, ideally, would be the front half of your foot. And then raising your toes and your heel. and then looking in. And then either forwards or backwards, depending on where you've got the space, stepping through. So you're walking on thin ice. So you extend your leg, you put your heel down, you lower your toes. Before you commit your weight, you're going to test the ice and only then move forwards. It's not a rush. If you're going backwards, it will be the ball of your foot that goes down first. And perhaps even more of a necessity to plant the foot, as we would say, before you transfer your weight, before you commit your weight. So now change direction, I'm going back, you can see. And bring a bit power. So what I'm trying to do, I'll show you that walking from the side. There was some decreases. So from here, if I go to walk straight across the room, I turn my right foot out, and I'm trying to maintain this alignment from shoulder to hip all the way through. I don't want to get to here and lean forwards. And I certainly don't want to be here and lean forwards because I become top heavy. And we have a little bit of margin for error, but we keep it as precise and as accurate as we can. And it's a useful exercise because we are very orientated towards moving and towards an awareness of what's of our shoulders, our chest, our head, and indeed our arms. So if we can really establish the walking as a meditative practice, we hardwire those aspects of the movement into our system. So then when we come to do something like fisherman cast the net, we're less likely to do this. Fisherman cast the net, when we get to it, it's going to be this. Notice the shoulders still in line, not angling forwards. And then when we do something like, say, this palm pressing movement here, it's there, and I do this. Whereas if I'm going to do this now, my foot could go anywhere. So have your right foot forwards and just begin to transfer your weight for fisherman cast the net. You start in the back foot, you go forwards. Again, as though you're in water, your arms just held back and then swinging through. With a very similar feeling to the one that I was describing at the start of the class with the swinging exercise. There's a slight sense of pulling until you arrive in the front leg and your arm just swings through a little bit more. And as you get used to the pattern, as you settle in, just pay attention to those small changes and movements within your body, particularly upper back and chest. Nice wave-like energy from your back foot flowing through your body, moving your arms, sinking into your front foot, and then same idea going back. Your arms are swinging to a very natural arc. They drop down and they swing up because they're attached at one end, of course. You're not trying to lift them at all. And the same goes for the next movement. Bring your hands in front of your hips, turn them palm forwards, pushing wave. So here the wave from the back foot pushes your arms forwards, and again they slip up just because of the attachment to your shoulder, not straining in your shoulder to raise your arms. One more time. This time, as you come back, you turn towards the back foot and your arms start to swing up. And this time, just see if you can find a way, give them a little bit of a hand to get them up a bit higher and then down. Really, what we're looking at here is an expansion through that front side of your body and an expansion through the rear side of your body. So this is where, once we've learned to be aware of those small changes that I mentioned earlier within the body, how to bring our intent to bear on those changes, then it produces the energy to move your arms with. And your arms and your hands guide and shape final expression. Good. So try those three movements with your left foot forwards. Start with your weight back, and then fisherman castanet. Pushing wave. Just feel that wave-like energy building from the ground. Remember, you need to sink your hips, release your hips, get that slightly stronger feeling in your legs each time you transfer the weight. And then you drop back, you sink into the back leg, and you feel the expansion upwards. You direct it into the side of your body, and then you go forwards. So it's like your arms are being lifted by this wave-like energy. And you're just guiding the shape through a combination of the turning of your center and just offering a pattern shape for your arms, not straining for that. Your arms will express the movement from the rest of your body. One more time, going back. This time, turn your front foot out a little bit if that was helpful to you last time. And as you turn, let the turn help you bring your foot in, and then you feel the expansion upwards through that side of your body. and you take the step either forwards or backwards, and you go forwards. Turning, I'm exaggerating, but you can see how my hip can come around, and that can help with the step. You don't have to take a big step, and if it helps you to do this, just put your toes down a little bit. Think about again what's happening in your pelvis as you do this. Don't rush this. Don't overextend your arms. They stay fairly close to the body mostly. I'm going to change direction now. You want your hands to sweep down across your hips. So we want our hands precise, shoulder height, step, and they almost brush across your hip, not quite, shoulder height. So it's not that the hands and arms aren't important, it's just that they come last in the chain of events. And then bringing your feet parallel. So the phrase that is often used to describe that chain of events is that the movement is rooted in the feet. We sink our weight. Transmitted through the legs, particularly with the weight transfer or with the up and down movement that we had before. Directed through the center of the body and expressed in the arms. So now, just rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Shoulder and your arm. On the other side. Onto your back. And around your hips. In your legs. Belly. And the upper part of your chest. Remember that nothing that we do in Tai Chi is ever purely of the mind or purely of the body. It's a mind-body art, really breaking down the barriers between the three treasures of Tai Chi, which is body, mind, energy, or movement, however you care to think about it. But we don't keep that the whole time. Life is not that straightforward. But what we do is we learn to come back to that rooted position. And the association of that is always with something calmer, something quieter, something more still as our attention goes down. So the movement becomes punctuated by these moments when we're settling. And this is demonstrated in the final exercise: embrace tiger, return to mountain, sink your hips down, push up. So yang, but this is followed by yin. You can already feel your hips sinking. The hands are drawn around as though you're holding the ball against your chest, and then let your arms drop down and back to the mountain. Embrace tiger, return to the mountain, and just feel what it is that brings you back. A very valuable resource for us, I think. One more time. And just stand, take a couple of slow, gentle breaths. Open your eyes. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for watching. I shall finish the video here. Thank you for coming along. Bye-bye.